How'd I almost die IRL? Feral punch. So a buddy of mine, Rocky Road, I work at Inmass Entertainment. We're the North American publisher for Terra for like the next couple weeks, and then we give it all away, right? One of the guys I work with, Rocky Road, he's an outdoorsy camping type dude, and I've lived in Washington for 10 years while working at Inmass, and I thought to myself, I really need to embrace the whole Washington. Like if you go on Tinder for the Seattle area, you see BLM, ACAB, hike. Like that's what everybody is. That's the three things that people are going to tag. Like if you don't match one of those, you're not going to ever hook up with anybody. You're not going to do the dirty with anybody on Tinder unless you hit one of those. And I'm like, well, I could hike. I could hike. That could be a thing. So I started checking it out. I was like, oh, hammock camping. That seems dope. I want to be a hammock camper. I don't want to sleep in a tent on the ground. So I spent probably $1,000. I bought all this equipment. And I told my buddy Rocky Road, he helped me buy all this stuff. And he was like, yeah, we'll go hike whenever you want. So we've been trying to plan this hike. And stuff just, didn't work out. So we finally settled on this last weekend. We're going to go hike. And then we got the weather report, and it was supposed to be rainy all day Friday. And I was like, yo, we could just postpone it. We could just like slide it a day and weather's going to be good. It's like, no. It's you live in Seattle, bro. Rain's rain. It's fine. So like, okay, cool. Yeah, we can do that. It's a 7-mile hike round trip up to Annette Lake, I think it is. It's like this lake up in the mountains, and it looks beautiful. It looks really, really cool. It's supposed to be kind of highly trafficked, but it's like, it's like almost a 4-mile hike up to this place and then 4-mile hike back. But no big deal. COVID for like the quarantine for like the last 8 months, sitting in the house, sedentary, not walking. Sure, you can go out and do that hike. Oh, and then, with a pack that's like stupid heavy, with your hammock and your clothes and stuff like that, right? It makes sense. Let's go do it. So we started this, and it's raining, and we start off probably at 10 a.m. We start this hike, and for like the first 1.5 miles, 2 miles, I'm okay. I'm like, this is cool. But about the 2.5 mile mark, I'm like, okay, this is really not worth it anymore. This hiking is, it doesn't need to be on my Tinder profile. I don't need this to be like, this is not how my life should be shaping up at this point. But we keep going. And now I'm starting to realize like, oh, I have waterproof shoes on, but my feet are wet. And I have a rain jacket on, but it's kind of soaked all the way through. And it's getting terrible, and it's cold. And the higher we get in elevation, we start coming to snow. And I'm like, holy mother of God, are we there yet? Are like, tell me we're there yet. Are we almost there yet? Are we almost there? So we finally make it to the camp. I'm like, and I'm just kind of standing there shivering, fingers are wet. Cause I had gloves too, but they were like, like city person gloves, like the not waterproof. So that's that. I just like took them off, squeezed them, and like water came out. I was like, oh God damn it. So I don't know how to put a hammock up. I saw one YouTube video on how to do a hammock. So I'm waiting for Rocky Road. He starts putting his up, and I see that he's struggling. And it's still downpouring, and it's freezing because we're at the level where it's just snow, but it's not cold enough to be snow, and so it's still raining. And the wind is picked up, and the wind is like blowing, and I'm like, all right, Rocky, where should I do this? He goes, that tree to that tree. And I'm kind of looking at it, and I started doing the rain tarp, but that's not making any goddamn sense. I'm like, wait, what? This doesn't seem like, that's not right. And it just doesn't make sense. So I was like, hey, let me help you put your hammock up. And he's like, okay. I go, what can I do? And he's like, I don't really know. And he's struggling. And now I'm becoming really unsure. And it really starts hitting me at this point. We're going to die. I'm going to die. I'm going to die up here. Like there's nothing, nobody comes and saves you here. Like there's no helicopter into this place. We don't have any cell service. We're just going to die here. And I'm like, oh God. So I'm indecisive for like 20 minutes. I'm just kind of bouncing between him and staring at my situation. And then finally I realized like, okay, I've got to get my hammock up. Like I got to get my hammock up because I got to get out of this wet, cold clothing. This is how you die, by not doing anything. So I finally like pull off my hammock to where I was trying to put it. I find a better place, and I find a place and I string up my rain tarp. I'm like, oh, this is going to work. So by about that time, Rocky finishes and he comes over, he starts helping me. So I get all my stuff up. So it's like probably 4 p.m. at this point. And I'm soaking wet. I have like fleece thermal underwear on and like some dry clothes and some hiking clothes over top of that. But like everything's just soaking wet, right? So they get their hammock up, they get in there, and I strip butt naked. I'm standing under my rain tarp in the forest of Washington by this lake, no one else around us, and I'm standing there just butt naked because I'm in soaking wet clothing. So I don't know what to do with my clothing. I'm like, there's nowhere to hang it, so I just leave a pile of clothing there on the ground. And I take some dry clothing out, put the dry clothing on, I crawl into my hammock, which surprisingly, it's really easy to get into a hammock. I kind of like, I was like, this is, no, like just you fall, it's great. And I've got an underquilt in the hammock, but there's no hot air in the underquilt. Like the longer you lay in your hammock, your body heat will warm that air between the underquilt and the hammock. But I haven't done that. And I've got a sleeping bag, and I try to get in the sleeping bag, but it's like a coffin. It's like a mummy thing. And I start trying to zip it up, and I can only get it about chest. And I'm like, I can't get it any higher. It's just my shoulders are too big. So I pull one arm out and I zip it up. And now I realize, holy shit, my arm is stuck outside of the sleeping bag, and this isn't working. And like, I'm like, oh God, how do you, and I finally get my arm in, I'm sitting there and I'm holding the hammock and the rain tarp is up, so everything to it. And I'm still shivering, but I'm like, I realize at this point, okay, I'm not going to die. We made it through. We're not going to die of hypothermia outside. I'm in my hammock. Everything's good. I'm laying there. And I'm still shivering, but I'm thinking like, I just need to warm up that air. So we're there for like 30 minutes. And now it's only like 5 p.m., right? It's like 5 p.m., but it's starting to get dark and it's cold outside and it's still raining and it's still the wind's blowing. But, you know, we're going to be in this. I'm thinking like, okay, I got the next 14 hours to 18 hours to lay in this hammock. And tomorrow on Saturday, the rain's supposed to stop. So laying there, it's like 30 minutes in. I'm like, okay, this is going to work out. And then I hear Rocky, he's with his wife. I hear his wife go, hey, Keaton, are you ready to go home? 100% think she's joking. Funny, haha, funny, haha. So I'm like, absolutely, I don't want to be here. So she goes, okay, let's leave. And I'm like, haha, funny. And I kind of look out the side of the hammock and she's out and she's starting to pack. And I'm like, wait. You guys said that we couldn't. You guys said we don't want to hike it in the dark. Like, what the hell? We just made it. Like, I'm tired. My legs really were hurting. We would just hike like 4 miles. And like, are you serious? Are you serious? Are we really going to go? And they're like, yes. Our hammock is soaking wet. Our sleeping bag is soaking wet. Our clothing is soaking wet. There's no way that we're going to stay warm tonight. And I'm like, my stuff is great. And they're like, our stuff is bad. I'm like, oh God. And they're like, we got the dog. They brought their little puppy with them. So I was like, oh God. So we start packing and it's dark now. Like it's dark. And this is where I realized I'm going to die again. Like we already made it through the phase where I thought we were going to die, but then I got into my hammock and I was like, okay, I'm going to make it through the night. Now my shoes are soaking wet. I'd hung my shoes up thinking that this is a great idea. And when I took my shoes down, like I poured water out of them. I'm like, oh God. So now I'm like, okay, we're definitely going to die now. So we got to hike down and it's pitch black dark the whole time. I brought a headlamp. I thought ahead. I brought a headlamp. So I put the headlamp on and I just start trucking it. And like I said, you got to remember the beginning part of the story where 8 months quarantine, I haven't been exercising, doing a damn thing. I haven't been walking. I walked to the bathroom, walked to the kitchen, back to the PC, right? So now I'm in like mile 5, working on mile 6. Legs are gone. Legs are just gone. Like and it was weird. Like the calves and thighs are struggling. My ankles and feet were hurting, but it was like the muscles on the side of my hips right there were just fucking destroyed. So now I'm starting to stumble and we're walking downhill and it's snowy and icy and we're walking through like little streams. And I'm like, yeah, this is where we die. A bear's going to jump out or a mountain lion's going to jump out. And like, I'm not going to run. It's just the moment I see, like at some point I'm going to look up in the trail and my headlamp's going to shine on 2 eyes of a mountain lion. And I'm just going to go, yeah, fuck, I'm dead. This is it. There would be no struggle. There'd be no fight back because I'm done. I'm just done. So I had dry clothing on, but now that clothing's so wet and I'm just pushing myself. And I swear to God, I know that I can make it. But I'm having those thoughts of like, I could just lie down right here and die. Like that looks like a really good spot to die right there. And it's like this, I'm going to die. This is going to be it. I'm just going to, at some point, I'm not gonna be able to do it anymore. I'm gonna have to sit down and my friends are going to go on and then a mountain lion's going to eat my brain. Like this is how it works. But then we finally made it back to the camp and I start seeing the camp and I'm like, I'm going to raise my hands above my head like this. My hands went to like my chest, like they're out. I couldn't even go high. Got to the car, soaking wet, set in the, and we made it. So we made it back home. So I had this plan. There was a plan to go out hiking on Friday, camp overnight Saturday and Sunday, and come back, or Friday night and Saturday night, and come back Sunday. And what we did is go out there, set up camp for 30 minutes, realized that this all sucked, and we hiked back. So I thought I was going to die twice before we got the hammock up and on the hike back in the middle of the goddamn dark. There's no reason to ever hike in the rain. If you live in Washington, don't go hike in the rain. Hey, how cool is it that you found the Guffy Bear YouTube channel? I mean, that's, wow, 1 in a million. Thanks for being here. And if you hit like, subscribe, and comment to one of my videos, my ego really, really explodes. It just inflates. You have that power. That's something that you can do today to make yourself and me feel good.